What's up everyone, it's Chio with CG Productions and welcome to the wildest DIY journey I've ever been on. This is the journey of how I turned my plain garage studio in Palm Bay, Florida into a full-blown video editing studio. Now I know online it always looks easy, but trust me, permits, plans, mistakes, late nights, and almost drilling into my solar panel. Yeah, that's right. Let me show you what it takes. It all started with a simple idea. Build a clean, quiet studio where I could edit, film, and grow my business. So I jumped onto Fiverr to get some plans drawn, and yeah, it was either too expensive or straight up not what I was looking for. So I drew the plans myself. How hard could it be? It was out of curiosity that I went down to the city of Palm Bay, the building department to be exact, just to find out if I really need a permit. And that is when they hit me with the reality check. They said, since you're doing electrical work, installing a AC mini split and drilling into structural walls, you're essentially remodeling the structure, and that means full permits. During all that chaos, I began to gather tools, a lot of tools. Drills, saws, clamps, grinders. I might even own half of the hardware store now. Once I had everything, I got to work beginning the framing with a lot of help from my brother. Give thanks to him to this day. We made a lot of mistakes, but the good thing is that we learned very quickly and we kept on pushing along. Then came the installation of the OSB sheathings, and at this point, it felt like we were actually building something. It was time to bring in the big guns, the licensed electricians. I don't play with electricity. That is one DIY I am not going to attempt. So they came in, ran their wires, installed their boxes, and they got everything ready for inspection. And to my surprise, the inspector came, looked around for like 2 minutes and said, looks good. Next up, insulation. And I swear, this should have definitely been easy, but that R13 bat was definitely itchy, and it seemed as if we weren't wearing protection or we were just not using it the right way. So it was no time to do the drywall. Let me tell you something, holding 4x8 sheets of drywalls over your head with tired arms is definitely not for the weak. While installing, screws would either sink too deep or they just didn't want to bite, and it was becoming a huge mess. The ceiling was one of the most difficult things we did so far as we progressed with this project. But once we figured out what we're doing, it all came together once we had the right technique. We were then on to the taping, which it's a whole nother beast. Each step of the way, we were learning something new. Like we had to be going to the YouTube university, getting that knowledge, then come the next day or come the next night to apply that knowledge. However, watching too many videos can get you confused at times, as my first coat didn't have enough coverage. My second coat was not wide enough, but all in all, we figured it out in the end. And then it was on to the sanding. That definitely wore us out, especially because we were using those little sanding bricks. After sanding a majority of the walls, I said to myself, you know what? This is a storage room. It's not like we're paid to do this job. We don't have to do it perfectly. And that's when I said enough is enough. I am not going over it, nor putting on a third coat. Now for the part that got me most nervous, the AC mini split install. After hours of doing research and watching every video that I can find, I finally felt ready to tackle it myself. I mounted the template, lined everything up, and started to drill through the concrete wall But guess what I didn't do? Check for clearance of my solar panel on the outside. And this was all because I'm rushing, trying to do a little bit of work, go back to my main job, and yeah, I almost drilled straight into it. That would have been something. Well, that is that. I patched up the hole, find a new spot that had enough clearance, and began to drill a new hole. Crisis averted for now. I got the outdoor unit installed with not a lot of issues. It was pretty easy. But when it came to connecting the indoor unit to the outdoor unit with the refrigerant lines, that was when the real stress kicked in. So the copper lines, as we all know, they are very delicate. So I bought a copper bending tool just to not use my hands, and it seemed as if it just made everything worse as I completely butchered the copper lines. So now I'm out purchasing flaring tools, deburring tools, you name it. Nonetheless, I got everything I needed just to get a secure connection, and we moved on. In the middle of all that chaos, trying to get those lines connected, the electricians came back out just to install the main disconnect switch. They also did the inside as well, put in all those fittings and outlets just to make sure everything looks neat for the final electrical inspection. Once their part was done, I went back to connecting the lines, vacuuming, and checking for leaks. And of course, you know it, more problems. The system was not holding vacuum. On the vacuum pump machine that I have, there was mist coming out of the top, and per the instructions, that should have only been there for 15 seconds. And 30 minutes passed and that mist was still there, so I know there was something completely wrong. At this point, I was so frustrated. I was like, why didn't I get a licensed HVAC contractor to do this? But then again, I remember the cost. So I calmed down myself and started to think. Eventually, I went back and moved the indoor unit off the wall, and to our surprise, there was a hiss at the connection, and that's where the leak was coming from. So I tightened the connections and the vacuum improved, but it was still not perfect. I let in a little refrigerant into the system to see if it will hold pressure, and it held it almost perfect, but I could see where it dropped a little. I was spraying soapy water on the connectors, but I wasn't seeing any bubbles or any signs of any leak. So after contemplating, I released all the refrigerant in the system. And that's when I heard another hiss at the connections by the outdoor unit. I had to get my brother to quickly get the wrenches so that I could tighten it up quickly before losing too much refrigerant. As I tightened the connection, the hissing went away, and hopefully enough refrigerant was in there still. It was time for the moment of truth. So I put in that disconnect switch and it was time. So I switched on the AC. Both my brother and I were just there nervously waiting. But it was blowing cool, the heat was working, and the airflow was perfect. We definitely had to give God thanks in that moment, even though we give God thanks all the time, but that was definitely the hardest part thus far. Well, the most stressful. Installing the door gave me a little trouble. Had to use some shims, even had to use OSB at some point just to narrow some of the gaps, but it came out level, secure, and smooth. So that was one more thing checked off our little project. After doing some research, I decided that I am going to epoxy the floor. This was also another project that I had to put a lot of research in, as to hire someone to do it, it was gonna cost an arm and a leg. So just got the materials and get to work. I grinded the concrete, prepped the surface, and true chips like a pro. The clear coat with the anti-skid also went on really well. With epoxy flooring, just ensure you do a lot of preparation, as that will determine whether your finished product will be good or whether the whole process will be enjoyable. Everything was coming along and moving smoothly as I now head on to the trims and the baseboards. This whole baseboard installation should have been easy and smooth, but you know me, somehow I'll make it more difficult than it should be. I eventually got them installed, slow and steady, and they were neat enough for me, and that is all that matters. So now it's time for the part that I think should be fun: painting. Honestly, painting was like therapeutic. Every stroke felt like the final step in a long journey. And when I step back and look around, I was honestly impressed and felt proud of what I did. It was looking really amazing. It was exactly what I conceptualized, my own creative space. Now I know some of you are wondering, how much did all this cost? Between permits, tools, materials, and the AC, it really did add up quick. But if I'd hired out to do everything, I would have been in a much deeper hole. Doing it myself really saved me thousands, and I gained some skills that I might be using again in the future. So that's what I went through to build my garage studio. It was messy, frustrating, expensive, but hopefully it will worth it in the end. If you're thinking about doing something similar like this, don't give up. You will figure it out in the end, just like how I did. Thanks for watching. Be sure to like, subscribe, drop a comment if you have any questions, or if you just want to say big up or bless up. More creative content coming your way soon from CG Productions. Your vision, our focus.